This is Sarah, and this weekend I made another assembly for the Propeller Pastie Universal Mounting Bra. So I'm calling this assembly the Pinwheel Pasties. I know I said I'd move on to the next augment having to do with the neck, but I was a bad raptor, and I had an idea and I had to do it. You know how that goes. I'm gonna tell you a little bit of a story first. So when I moved home from college, I actually moved back in with my parents, first off, because that's kind of what you do when you leave college, I guess, and have no place to go. I didn't have access to a machine shop or anything anymore, suddenly. I had all these awesome tools and equipment at my disposal when I was a student, and then poof, all that was gone overnight. 3D printers, the desktop variety, hadn't actually come out yet, or they're just starting to come out, and I didn't know about them. So there was this brief window of time for about a year where I lived with my folks and I made all of my robots out of Tupperware. Those plastic containers that you put food in and stick in the refrigerator. It turns out my mom has somewhat of a fetish for hoarding Tupperware containers, and not the kind that you buy from the supermarket either. My parents enjoyed going out to dinner quite a bit back then, and they would get their food to go, and fancy restaurants would give you these really nice boxes with clear lids to take your leftovers home in. And she would clean them out after she was done and save them all. So I had this giant cache in their house to just sort of harvest from whenever I wanted to make an enclosure or something. And I definitely took advantage of that. Now that I'm on my own making robots and stuff, I still have this desire to eye up containers. So if I'm at IKEA or Target or anywhere and I see something that looks appealing as a shape, I will probably get it and make something out of it, because it's in my blood at this point. I ended up using a container, much like I just cited. Mark, I think, picked this one out though. Here. It's this beautiful thing. So Mark has somewhat of the same bug. When he sees things that would make good light diffusers, he can't help himself from buying them either. Now, how this ended up becoming a boob though, my life involves a portion of the spring being dedicated entirely to grant writing and applying for artist residencies. I found that I'm most effective in doing this if I sequester myself away on the couch in the living room, away from all of the projects that might distract me from getting the actual adult work done. While I'm sitting on the couch, I wanted something to keep me company, and I requested that Mark make me some sort of mood light, and he took this thing, poked a hole in it, stuck a bank of RGB LEDs inside, and then just sat that down next to me on the couch. And this became my friend. This was my moral support for that entire period that I was applying for stuff. And I kind of grew fond of it. Like, I grew this deep affection for light inside of this shape. And I decided to make an assembly for the Propeller Pastie Bra out of these things. I'm calling this thing the Pinwheel Pasties, yeah? There is a sensor involved, but it's not actually reading any data from my body. And I'm kind of okay with this because for the POV pasty assembly, there's no feedback whatsoever. One of the things that had been floating around in my head was having some sort of free spinning propeller that was on a bearing instead of a motor that somebody could just walk up and like flick with their finger, and it would spin really, really fast. But that spinning would then go into the enclosure and transfer that rotation into some device that would like diddle the areola or the nipple. So I created this hub that has a bearing, and it transfers the rotation of the propeller into the enclosure and creates somewhat of a disco light show inside of this dome, because you can see it backlit by those delicious RGB LEDs. And when the propellers are spinning, you can just sort of see whatever is connected to it on the inside, kind of like a baby's mobile or a cat toy, just sort of like whipping around. There's one photoresistor on each bubble that looks out at the propeller as it's spinning, and as the propeller whips past this photocell, it's either seeing the darkness of the propeller or the light beyond it. And based on the value that it receives about how light or dark it is, it controls the color of the RGB LEDs inside of the dome. So as the propeller spins, depending on how light it is outside, you get a nice, kind of like sirens, cop car, siren boobs, disco boobs. Yeah. At some point I realized I didn't have to actually just rely on somebody else spinning the propeller or me constantly spinning the propeller. I could make these things wind-powered if I wanted. I could have wind-powered boobies, wind-powered nipple diddling. So I spent a day fashioning my own miniature pinwheels out of binder dividers. Because of this use with the photocell, I had to make sure that my pinwheels were modified in such a way that half of the time light passed through them and half of the time they blocked sunlight from reaching that photocell mounted in the base. This is probably my favorite assembly for the Propeller Pastie universal boob mount. It's like a really simple thing, but it's very satisfying. So without further ado, I said that the next augment that I'm going to be starting development on is something that has to do with the neck. Until I get started on that though and start streaming it or whatever, keep making awesome stuff out there, and as always, thank you for watching.